All right, let's go ahead and get started. This evening, as I mentioned earlier, will be a little different than our last webinars. So thank you for taking the time out of your evening to join myself and Robbie. We're here to answer questions on the upcoming season that may be out there lingering regarding more FHSAA specific questions. The last webinars have obviously been specific to different topics and not necessarily FHSAA information. So this evening, I do have Robbie here with me. He is our new football sports administrator for the upcoming season. As most of you know, Frank has left our office. So Robbie is here. We will be answering questions again, like I said. If you have anything that needs to be answered, questions about, concerns, please throw those in the Q&A box as we get going. I'll give Robbie a little time here to say hi and introduce himself before we head into our first topic that kind of lingered over from one of our first webinars. As you can see, I have a couple other individuals with me, Chris Poole and Jake Walker, and they're going to speak on that topic as well from their end of law enforcement. So, Robbie.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I want to thank you all. It's a pleasure to join you all, and I apologize. First, I need to apologize for not being here last week. Had a birthday party to attend, and felt that was necessary to get that birthday dinner to be able to attend that. But yes, Jeremy, I appreciate you and Taylor putting these together for our officials, and I do look forward to working with our football officials throughout the state. If I have not met you, I've been on staff for, I think we're going on 8 years now. In the fall, I used to be the girls volleyball administrator, wrestling administrator, and in the spring, I was the baseball administrator. A couple changes in the office. I am now, as you see, the football administrator, boys and girls weightlifting, and then also the baseball administrator as well. I look forward to our officials. Look back to the day of when I was, a head coach, working in the school system, and then also, working hand in hand with my dad, who was an official throughout the state of Florida, and also was worked in an association in the center part of the state. But I look forward to getting to know you all. Feel free to call myself if you have questions. I know we're in the process of putting together those football clinics and working hand in hand with your associations and making sure that you all have the trainings that you all need to have a successful football season. So Jeremy, I turn it back over to you. And again, the floor is open, and Jeremy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So the first topic we are going to touch on, as I mentioned earlier, is guns, weapons, shootings that may happen around or near the football field. What should you do? What protocol should happen? Obviously, there's nothing set as far as FHSAA goes regarding that, as it's a local hopefully protocol that's in place with law enforcement in the schools that is shared. So tonight I do have Chris and Jake, and they are law enforcement here who are also officials. So I just wanted, I invited them to speak from their end, kind of to give a little bit of advice or maybe best practice for our officials on what they do in their area. Obviously, every area is going to probably be a little bit different. But hopefully some of the information that they share with us tonight will be useful no matter where we are. So Chris, Jake, I don't know which one wants to pop on first, but I do see Jake's unmuted, so maybe we'll start with Jake. I know he's in the with the Greater Naples Officials Association. So Jake, you want to chat a little bit with us?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Rob Mack had asked me if I would be willing to come on and just chat a bit about specifically about firearms on school campus from an official's standpoint, perhaps, just so people generally understand what the officials can or can't do as it relates to firearms. I will tell you that, first of all, most law enforcement officers are pretty pro firearm rights, maybe I should say, and certainly pro self-defense. That being said, I want to mention a few statutes real quick for you just to take a look at. You can find almost anything on any of your major search engines nowadays. So you could search some of these things yourself. You just have to be adept at reading through statutes and getting from one section of statute to another section of statute and whatnot. But as I talk very briefly, just certainly feel free to write down these numbers, these statute numbers. So the first one I'm going to talk about is 790.115. So if you were to do a Google search, you could Google search FHSAA, which is just Florida State Statute 790.115, and it'll come right up with the statute there. So it's easy enough to do. But that's the statute that involves possession of a firearm on school property. And it specifically says that a person cannot possess a firearm on school property, on a school bus, at a school sanctioned event, unless a person may carry a firearm in their vehicle. And you refer to statute 790.25 subsection 5 for that. So a person could bring, as long as they're not, and this is a little peculiar perhaps, as long as they're not a student, they could bring a firearm onto school property as long as it's securely encased and not readily accessible in their vehicle. And I'm just telling you this from the perspective so that guys know what they can and can't do. Now, a school can adopt a policy and publish a policy that says no one can bring a firearm on school property for the purposes of student and campus parking privileges. Now, that's a whole, we started to get into the weeds there a little bit about, so if you were to bring a firearm on the school campus in violation of that published policy, then your parking privileges would be withdrawn from the school. You guys can't see me, but I'm smiling a little bit because the statutes kind of spin around us a little bit here. But the bottom line is you can't carry a firearm on school property. However, you could, provided that it's not readily accessible and it is securely encased, and we can certainly talk about what that means. You could have one secured in your vehicle while you were officiating an event or what have you. Now, whatever your association, individual associations may or may not have policies and protocols that dictate what you do, but that is the statute as it relates to that. Now, the question sometimes comes up, well, what if I have a Florida concealed weapons permit or a Florida permit to carry a concealed firearm? If you have one of those, then you probably already know, because it's specified in the permit process, that you can carry a concealed firearm in a number of places, but there are some specific places that are clearly identified that you cannot carry a firearm concealed. And that permit allows you to carry it concealed on your person. So we're talking about your person, not your vehicle at this point. So if you have a concealed firearms permit, you can carry a concealed firearm, but you cannot carry it concealed on school property. The permit and the statute specifically specify that. So anybody without a permit could carry one in their vehicle as long as it's securely encased, not readily accessible. If you have a permit, that does not give you permission or authority or the legal ability to then carry that firearm concealed on your person into the school property, into the locker room, certainly on the field, that sort of thing. Just so everybody's kind of clear on the statutes. And there's certainly, I'm sure there's some case law out there and whatnot. We actually just had a case where we had a person who carried or had a firearm in their vehicle in the glove box, and they were having the firearm worked on at a technical center at a high school, and they were actually a student of the high school. They were an adult student of this adult learning center. And our state attorney's office reviewed that case and said very clearly the statute allows them to carry the firearm in their glove box. Now the school could revoke their parking privileges if they wanted to, but doesn't change the fact that it did not make it criminal for them to carry it there. So I hope that's clear. The bottom line is a person can carry a firearm in their vehicle as long as it's securely encased and not readily accessible, which means it cannot be on your person. If you have a concealed firearms permit it still doesn't permit you to walk around the school campus with a firearm concealed on your person. Now, some of us may, disagree with that statute from the perspective that, very responsible gun owners save lives every single day in various places around the state and around the country. But that is what the statute says. I certainly take questions or thoughts if you have them. And we can, talk about active shooter response. That's probably a topic for another day. I coordinate both our citizen response to active shooter protocols here within our county, and also our law enforcement training program for the same topic. So, we could certainly talk about that. We can talk about another time, whatever you guys would like to do. But that's all I have for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jake. Chris, do you have anything to add? I think you may have wanted to touch on the active shooter in, I think it was the first webinar we had. So I don't know, maybe you want to touch on that a little bit now, since it was your specific question, and kind of dive in a little bit there regarding that particular scenario.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, sir. A little bit of background. I've officiated for 20 years, retired from the Navy in 2007. I currently work for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office as a detective. So as a disclaimer, I'm not speaking on behalf or for the agency I work for. I'm basically speaking on the training experience I have, and a little bit of my tactical compass here, that whenever I do games, some of the things I do pre-game, because like they say, like they've said all summer with these webinars, pre-game is one of them. We all have those rivalry games that tend to have extra security for a reason. They're not there because they're giving out free food. We know those schools, we know those areas. Some areas may not have issues where the propensity for gun violence is there. Just a couple of things I did look up is that August in 2018, Palm Beach Central, William T. Dwyer, two students were killed, and a total of 3 were injured. And here it is, we're going out for a Friday night football game. And again, in 2018, here in Jacksonville, Raines High School at Lee High School, 1 person was killed, 2 was injured. Okay, again, Friday night, we're supposed to be having fun with the family and our kids, trying to make it to college. And over the past 2 years up here, we've had shootings at youth games. So I say that to say this, is that gun violence is real. Gun violence can happen anywhere and at any time. Sometimes it can happen in areas more prone than others. And where I'm going with this is that whenever I do my pregame, and I know where my game is at, my crew were tight enough to know that I'm just not going to pregame something and not have some validity behind it. I will explain to them that if we're at a certain school or area of the city of Jacksonville, I will come up with a attack plan. Tactical action plan is kind of watered down, is meaning that we'll do our pregame, but we will say, I will bring up, if something happens, whether it's inside the perimeter of that fence or outside the perimeter of that fence at that neighborhood, if depending on where we come out for the locker room and how the field is setting and facing, I will come up with 2 points of a muster. If a shooting happens in or on the school or near the school, we will go to spot A. However, if the shooting is between us and spot A, spot B is where we're going to go. Because a lot of times our quickest direction off that field is not directly to that locker room, because if that shooting or that active shooter is in between us and that locker room, what are we going to do? Okay. Granted, we're grown men and grown women. We can do what we want to do and choose what we choose to choose. But I believe as a crew chief, yeah, we're responsible for the management of that event and that game. However, I do feel I'm responsible for the 4 other guys on my crew to make sure that if something happens, that, hey, we're all accounted for, because I already know that, there's going to be a call from our commissioner. They're going to be called from the state to make sure our officials are okay, and things of that nature, and down the road. There's sometimes I will tell the site administrator, some of them they know what I do, and I will tell them, hey, we just had a shooting down the street within a quarter of a mile. If something happens, here's what my crew and I are going to do. Okay, what you do with your team is one thing. However, we'll do our best to fix everything in the end. Now, granted, nothing has happened. It's just, I feel if you pregame that, you're prepared for it. It's not to say let's go in there, like the last Boy Scout, run a touchdown. I'm not saying that. And I don't think that anyone on here believes that. So it's just a safety opportunity for us if something happens. Look at the Nationals baseball game the other night. It happens in the professional level. Okay. Granted, no one inside that game got hurt or injured or things of that nature, but you notice how those players got their family and took them with them. Now, did the players say, hey, mom, dad, come watch my game? And if something happens, here's what's going to happen, or here's what we're going to do. So they got them to safety. So think about that before your games. It's okay to have that little bit of a edge in the sense of thinking maybe if something happens in the neighborhood, because bullets don't have a name. They don't. Okay. So the individuals outside these schools in the neighborhoods, they don't care about us. They only care about what they're doing in that moment of time. Okay. So when the shooting happened at Rains a couple years ago, I talked to the crew chief. He said, I talked to him right after it happened. He said that all the officials ducked and they took their shirts off. Now, granted, a lot of times these agitators are after one person and one person only, not the officials of that sport. However, we all know that at some level, someone is betting on that game, and they're just having to be mad at the officials for a penalty or a missed call they felt. I would say take your shirt off. Once you get to your muster location, take that shirt off and not be known who you are. But if you do that, again, let your site administrator know that if it happens, this is the two places I'm going to go. Now, I have kind of went and told them, I says, if it happens, we're going to make sure that the crew is safe. I'll make sure the team is safe. So if you see me take my shirt off and take off running and strap on my AR-15, that means I'm there to help my fellow police officers in something in that nature. Because a lot of times I'm afforded that opportunity where games are in Duval County where I can drive a unmarked police car. So they don't know I'm there. People I work with, they know I'm there. But I just, I brought that question up earlier in the season or earlier this, for the webinar, just, kind of those what if situations. Because not every conference is association is going to face these issues. I do respect the fact that there's other law enforcement personnel in these associations that have their own take on it. But I think laterally we're all in agreement of making sure we're safe out there. So that's just something I brought up, and I thank you for letting me bring that up. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer again. And so I'll mute myself and listen to everybody else.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Jake. We appreciate that. Yeah, that's one thing we obviously want all of our officials to be cognizant of and aware of. Unfortunately, that is the world we live in today. So if that's something that the association has brought up a plan or a protocol for your individuals, and before you hit the court or the field, please go through that and just keep everyone safe. Obviously, we hope we don't have to do that or go through it, but again, I'd rather our officials have a plan and know where they're going and what to do and where to expect each other than to be caught out in the middle of nowhere, not really having an idea of what's going on. So again, thank you, gentlemen. I thought that was probably a pretty good topic to cover just briefly before we got started, since it came up earlier. So now we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. If you have any questions, throw them in there for either of these gentlemen. I'll be more than happy to ask them and have them join us again. But the first question I'll start with is, does the FHSAA have any designated rules interpreter for football? And if so, what is their contact information? Robbie, you want to kind of
Yeah, the
Uh,
way
we-
our staff works is we are the designated rules interpreter. You're feel free to call me. If I obviously don't know the answer, I will get the answer for you. We work nationally with all of our other states, but we are considered the rules interpreter for our state from our office, and we will get that answer for you.
And we do have people we rely on and we can turn to. Obviously, they're not designated as that, since it is our office from the eyes of the Federation. So either way, whether we know it right off the hand or we don't know, we definitely would get that answered for you. It may take a day or so, but reach out to us with any of those role interpretations that you may have. COVID protocols for 2021, student athletes will be back in school 100%. Will we be able to use locker rooms on Friday nights? I also believe you mentioned the sidelines are going back to the previous rule of 25 to 25 yard lines and all the way to the 10-yard line. What else do we need to know for COVID for the 2021 season?
The one thing that we're going to stress the importance of this year is making sure you're talking to your local schools. Every school district is going to be different on what their actually COVID-21 protocols are. So it's very important that you speaking to your schools, especially once you're completing the contracts for the upcoming school year, which those should have been done once spring. But I would be reaching out to all your schools, making sure what their actual protocol is, because we are putting that on the schools and what their expectations are for your officials. We have not heard of any schools doing anything or making any drastic changes. But if you do have any concerns, feel free to reach out to me and we'll make sure we get to the bottom of it. But I can't stress enough to make sure you're communicating with your schools, the schools that you are officiating on Friday night, Thursday night, Saturday. Make sure that what their setup is before your crews arrive.
Correct. And the part with the sidelines going back to the 25s or in between the 25s, that is accurate. That adjustment from last year would not be carried over to this upcoming season. Will the football exam be different from last year's test? It was. We took that information about the difficulty of the exam. We put that in the hands of the arbiter and their committee that they created with that exam. They asked our advice for some individuals throughout the state. We gave them contact information. I'm not aware if anyone was selected this year, but it will be an arbiter-made exam. I don't know the difficulty level of it. I should be getting that within the next week or so, but I would prepare and plan for it to be somewhat similar. I know they were making adjustments. I just don't know what, as far as difficulty wise, those adjustments were. Here, next question. Looking for radios for our crew and came across information that Texas has a list of approved radios officials can use. Does FHSAA have such a list or policy on the radios used by football crews on Friday night? We do not have a specific brand or approved brand. We don't want to get into the weeds of which one is better than the other. Obviously, we know our officials may have their own preferences on those sorts of things, similar to like the electronic whistles that came into place last year. Nfhs listed several or a few brands that they were recommending. However, we took that information off and just put they were allowed. That way our officials have the ability to choose and test which ones were better for them in their environment if they chose the electronic whistle. So there is not a list of approved brands of radios from our office.
Jeremy, I'm going to jump over here on the chat box. Somebody had asked where John Stanley had asked where the finals will be located. I can tell you 1A through 3A will be in Tallahassee. 4A through 8A has not been determined yet. Myself and J.A. Colasante are currently working on that. Our goal is hopefully to have something out something finalized. It does take a process to determine a location of where you can have the 4A through 8A state football championships. And our goal is to hopefully have something out in about mid to late August. And we'll continue to work on a venue, and we will get that information out to our officials. But 1A through 3A will be in Tallahassee.
Next question, asking about how the registration process is coming for 2021. Do you anticipate more or fewer football officials this year? Also, how many officials are there statewide? Last year, obviously with COVID, probably isn't the best year to look at those numbers, but we are right under the 7,000 range for officials last year. That's usually up around the 8,000 to 8,500 range. So we were down last year, obviously. Do you anticipate more or fewer football officials this year? Hopefully we have more. I know last year was a struggle, and all areas of the state to cover games between the shortage of officials, between opting out, retiring, moving out of state, or whatever their personal reasons were, and then obviously COVID and cancellations and things like that. So our hope is that it is a lot more, but we'll see. Registrations are going smoothly. We're getting 100 to 200 a day. So right now, between all sports combined, we were over the 2,000 mark already. So hopefully that trend will continue upwards. The next question, can you send out example videos from Nfhs of targeting and defenseless players and those that are not? I will get with Nfhs. I'll see what they have. I know they have a library of videos. I don't know what that consists of as far as being updated with that new rule. But I can definitely get in contact with them to see what videos they have available and can send our direction. So if I'm able to, I may send that link out to all our officials, kind of like I do through Arbiter, or I may just post it on the central hub where it's a direct pathway to the Nfhs website. So I can work on that here in the coming days with the Nfhs. Any other questions? We're here for you guys. We jumped on and thought it'd be good to speak to our officials. Obviously, with Robbie being new and not as many COVID updates and things like that this year. So if there's anything pressing or just needing to know, please throw those in for us.
Jeremy, we have a couple questions coming in. Is there any thought of suggesting to schools they schedule varsity level games on other than Friday nights? This would help with the crew scheduling, maybe Saturday night. Absolutely. That's something you and your association can communicate. If there's something that that you're struggling to officiate those games or fill those slots, let us know. We don't have a problem reaching out to those schools and looking at it. The only problem is the opposing school. If that school's coming out of the area, there may already be some scheduling issues with that. But that is something that we ask that each association communicate that through their schools to when you're working on the schedules. Jeremy, you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, and also when schools call us about the lack of officials, or they can't get enough officials, we do recommend. That's the one thing that we do recommend. Can you change it to a different day? Or we even ask, are you helping recruit officials? Because this is an issue that it's all of us should be involved in. Our office, obviously the associations are doing their part, and the schools. The schools are just as big a part of this as we are, and it's games that we're trying to cover for them. Are they having their kids who aren't going to the next level sign up? Are they promoting signing up to become an official? Are they touching base with the association saying, hey, we have a couple of kids that would be a good official? So we definitely do communicate that with our schools and recommend possibly changing days if that's what's needed to get a crew out to get their games. Because the last thing we want on our end is those kids not to be able to play a game and have it canceled. So we would rather have them reschedule it, whether it's a Wednesday night, Thursday night, or Saturday. We'd rather it be played than be canceled. The next one, can the FHSAA work with the Florida DOE in making up a high school course for students interested in officiating? That's actually going on already in parts of the states. It is allowed. I know Greater Naples Officials Association worked a couple of years ago now. I want to say last year, but I've been on staff longer than that. So it's probably been a couple of years now where it is in their schools, and the kids actually get a PE credit for those courses. And Rob Mackett and his crew down there did a fantastic job getting that set up, getting exams from our office, and things like that. So that is definitely something that is available for schools and districts who are interested in that, and to give their athletes or their students who join in credit for school. Great question, though.
I can touch on the clear visor policy. That's something I actually met with Bob Colgate about when we were over at the summer conference. That is a rule that we will be following, and making sure all of our schools understand that tinted visors are not approved, and they will not be approved from the FHSAA. Jeremy, did you have anything for the pay scales? I know that.
I know the task force is still intact. Justin is still over that. He is out of the office until the beginning of August. Him and his wife just had a baby at the beginning of the month. So I'm sure that is on his radar as the 22-23 school year quickly approaches. So I can get back with him and kind of see where things stand on that. But as of right now, I know the task force is still together and would be scheduled to meet prior to that season. Had an instance where we had a bad ending after a playoff game last year, and my ET6 report was made available by the Orlando Sun. Is that common practice to release reports like that to the press? Yes, that is, if it is requested through a public records request. We do work under the Sunshine Law. So if that request comes from the news press, if it comes from other schools, if it comes from a parent, whoever it comes from, if they send in that request and pay the fees that are associated with that, we would have to release it. Obviously we do. Anything that is a student related under 18, it does get blacked out and off that report. Personal information, phone numbers, things like that as well. But the report itself and any of the letters, if they ask for the letters that went out to the schools regarding those individuals, that information would be released. Yes.
Jeremy, do we want to touch on the corrective action team since we're here? Is that something we want to touch on, or do we want to save that for another Zoom?
No, we can touch on that here.
Okay. I mean, Jeremy and I both are members of that corrective action team. The corrective action team is when you submit that AT6, we work on those throughout the week of anytime a student, athlete, coach, anybody has been ejected, removed from the game. Those are things that our department, the operations side of the building, works on that. And we review those, we go through those, and we're the ones that send out the punishment. And that comes from each sport administrator that is in our office. So that's something I have to give to Jeremy. Jeremy's kind of taken that under his wing, and we get a lot of them, unfortunately. There are quite a few ejections throughout the year. And that's just something that I wanted to kind of briefly touch on. Make sure that as an official, and if you do have an AT6, you're just very clear and concise in the information that you share with us. Unfortunately, if there's a brawl that you had to deal with, make sure we get all the numbers. Make sure you're very detail oriented when you are submitting that to our office, because if not, we will be in communication with you and your association in trying to get as much information as possible.
Yeah, and to touch on that, just kind of give an example, just because it's recent. We did have a brawl in the spring, and we had to hand out suspensions and things like that. And unfortunately, it was of a school that had one earlier in the fall. And to kind of give you an idea of kind of what Robbie's meaning on being specific, the report we received in the fall had that the player was seen throwing a punch. Our office, our committee, unfortunately didn't know the extent of that incident in the fall. We weren't aware if it landed. We didn't know if it was multiple punches thrown or anything like that, because we won't go out and request film. As long as we get that report from the official, we take that as what happened, unless we receive other information from schools and things like that. So we sent out the suspension for that athlete based on just seeing a punch thrown, and based on our rubric, we kind of break it down whether it was just a punch thrown, kind of like a slap or a swipe to the head, things like that. If it's landed, it's obviously a little more severe. If there's multiple punches thrown, it becomes even more severe. So the punishments will vary depending on what was seen and what was done. And then in the fall, or in the spring with this brawl, again, punches thrown, multiple punches thrown and things like that were reported and seen on film, because we had to investigate a little bit more. And the school came back asking, why did this person in the fall only get X amount of games for this, but then these kids who were punching and almost doing the same exact thing got a few more games? Well, the difference between the reports was just that it was seen a punch thrown, so they got a lesser amount, where the other ones were multiple punches. But that's the information that the schools look for and tried to make their argument against is, well, it's almost the same thing. Why wasn't the same punishment? So if we just have all the specifics and the details, it's easier for us to defend not only our office, but you as the officials who sent that report. So just wanted to give that, because it was recent, and we've kind of been dealing with that issue and trying to explain that on our end. So we can go ahead and go to the next question, Robbie. It had to deal with the protective clear shield.
Yeah,
Yes.
and thank you, John, for responding to that. But that is under 1.5 player equipment. There's a note there that allows tinted eyewear to be worn. Sunglasses can be worn. Basically, it's a health and safety rule. Those the trainers, the medical staff want to make sure they're able to remove if a student athlete does go down. The first thing they want to check is the eyes and where that student athlete is on per the injury. So when they can remove the eyeglasses, sunglasses, things like that, and that's why the tinted face shield is not approved.
Robbie, you want to touch on the next one? Do schools lose their opportunity to host games when they have minefields, I'm assuming like potholes, throughout the field, endangering players and officials?
If we know about it, we can ask the school to address it. That's something that we continue to work with our member schools. If we don't know, we're not aware. I appreciate you giving me the information about this school here in this note. That's something we can definitely take a look at and make the school aware. We definitely don't want to take, at the end of the day, we don't want to take the game away from a school, because they've honestly earned the right to host a playoff game because they've had such a great regular season. So we'd ultimately give that school every opportunity to fix the game or fix the playing field to make sure that it is a playable surface. But at the end of the day, we do not want any student athlete or official getting injured during the play.
What will the state's position on umpires wear a body cam to sports contests in the future? Great question. Honestly, I don't have an answer for that. This is the first we've heard of it. I don't even know where to begin. Has this come up in any of the sports, Robbie, that you've covered in the past?
No, not from the officiating standpoint.
Yeah, that let's save that for a later date and time. I think that's probably, I know it's getting thrown around in schools and teachers wearing or having cameras in schools and things like that. But body cams for officials, I honestly don't know what our position would be, as this is the first time I'm hearing of that possibility even happening.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it makes me laugh when you say body cameras, because it's bad enough for an agency of our size to manage and store the data for that without having the public say, well, they doctored it. Because if you do have something of that nature, where an umpire catches a fight, catches whatever, well, that kid's parent or advocate's going to say, well, you cut part of it out. So now, you got it's a big to me. It's a big trick bag, when you get to that. So it'll say, well, North Florida does it. Well, why don't South Florida do it? So that would be something that it would probably, every association would have to do it, because Team A comes from Tallahassee to play here in a playoff. Well, they have them out there, but we don't hear them. That's a whole mixed bag of nuts that you'd fall into on that.
Thanks, Chris, for shedding that point of view. Drones, that question has come up a lot recently. Our office does not regulate the regular season use of drones. That is county by county, school by school, school district by school district for the regular season. For playoffs, the start of the state series, they are a no-go for the state series. But again, for regular season, that is local autonomy as far as if they are allowed or not allowed. Robbie, you have anything else on that one?
Nope, you hit that one. You got that one's right. That one's perfect.
Do you want to touch on the association who agreed to the 10 by 10? We're not doing that right this year.
No, well, let me communicate to that association, and I'll talk to their schools, and we'll move from that.
Okay.
We'll take that at another time.
Postseason would be the 25 by 25 as normal. That was the second part of that question.
Yeah, and if anything changes, we will communicate that to the associations. We will make you well aware of that, but right now it's 25-25.
Next question, we're about becoming an official, a new individual. Yes, there is a state test. It will open up on the Central Hub August 2nd. Will be available through September 7th, which is right after the holiday there, Labor Day. Is there a requirement to allow new officials to become varsity officials, or are you relying on the association? That would be a local association decision, or if they allow that. We do not have restrictions from our office that would keep a first year individual from doing a varsity match if needed, or has that ability to do that. But again, that would come from the local association on if they have any policies or local guidelines to becoming a varsity official the first year. A few years ago, the Nfhs allowed states to use replays. Some states experiment with it. The FHSAA was looking into it. Any thought on what may be coming down the road in 22, 23, 24?
Well, that would officially come from our advisory committee. And, looking back, reviewing some of the notes and stuff like that, I have not seen any action items for replay. I know it has been discussed throughout the state, but at this time, I would say there is no movement on that, or there are no action items or discussion items for that matter in the advisory committee. But that is something, we work for our membership. If that's something that they are, that they're wanting to use, then that's something we can look at, and we can communicate that with our other states and through the Nfhs.
Robbie, you want to touch on the next one? Will FHSAA allow local associations to officiate playoff games in the first round in their county the same as last year?
That is to be determined. That is something that our entire department decides on for all sports, and we will look at that. Joe, I appreciate the question, but I can say that answer is to be determined. But I can tell you it seemed to work really well from talking to Frank, and in the sports that I covered, it really worked very well in girls volleyball last year and baseball. So we had a lot of positives, heard a lot of positives from that, but that is to be determined. We will talk about that as a staff, and we'll communicate that to you all well in advance.
Using play clocks at schools mandatory in the future.
That's the same as the replay. You know, that's something that we would either if the NFHS were to mandate that, or if that is something that the football advisory committee would like to see put in place.
Roger, I see in the chat the play clock on the field. Can you expand on that question a little bit more so we can give you a proper answer? I'm not sure if your follow-up to that was what you're meeting or not, but we have a little bit more time here. Please feel free to send in any more questions that you may have. If not, we'll kind of start winding down and putting a wrap to this evening. Any way that the FHSAA could edit out those areas that would be beneficial for officials and or coaches, like we used to have with field clinics, or going way back when the FHSAA staff came out to designate areas and showed video and answered questions. I'm not sure if you're meaning to post these webinars for everyone. If that's what you're meaning when you meant edit out those areas, that's what I do. I do post these all online through the FHS Central Hub. So they are available to be reviewed by associations if they want to play back for their groups, or just individuals who want to go back at the end of this. We do post them online within 24 hours, at the max 48 hours. It has been discussed about going around again to associations. That really hasn't gained any steam, obviously, as far as COVID is concerned, and getting out and about still within our staff. We've still kind of been here with webinars and things like that. Field clinics, any meetings that that an association holds, Robbie and I, or any of the staff members, if we're invited, we try to get out to as many as we can prior to COVID, obviously. Hopefully we can start that back up if we're made aware of those. I did attend several prior to COVID. So yes, our staff is willing to go out and see our associations and how they're doing things, and speak if need be. So let's kind of get through COVID and what we're dealing with COVID before we actually start saying, yes, we're going to do it this year. Because as a staff, we're still not even back in office yet. Some of us are still remotely, some of us are doing half-time in office, out of office. So we're still taking this seriously, in a way, to an extent, I guess you can say, knowing that it is still affecting people, and we're trying to do our part to keep everyone safe as well.
Hey, Jeremy, let me just touch on one thing. You know, when your associations are meeting, and if you are meeting via Zoom, we can meet with you that way as well. That's another option that we can provide. So
yes, I've been on several Zoom webinars, a couple from the Miami area. I've been on a couple last year with Greater Naples. So yeah, if you send us out that information, we'd be more than happy to join in as long as we're available. So please don't feel free to send us that information if you would like us to address something for a meeting, or stop by for 10-15 minutes to answer questions. We would definitely do that for your associations. And kind of changing the topic a little bit as a few more questions pile up, just to kind of give everyone a heads up, I have been working with the NFL and their grassroots program over the summer, started kind of late spring into the summer. And they actually selected the Miami area, since the Miami Dolphins are there, to begin this grassroots training program. They had their first webinar that they held for them last week. I just received a video of that. It was the first one was more geared to first through 3-year officials. So I do plan to post that up online. It's a little different than how I'm able to do it when we host them, since it was hosted by the Greater Miami Association. So just want to fill you all in. We are getting some interest from the NFL to help out with some trainings and how to move up if that's an interest for our officials, and things like that. So be looking for an email out with that information if you are on and you're a first to second or third year official, or any of our booking commissioners or presidents, and you want to share that with those individuals. Again, I will get it. I'm trying to find a way to get that posted the best way to be shared. So just want to give you guys a heads up on that information.
There's a quick question here, Jeremy. Is there a formula for choosing playoff crews assignments? There is no magic wand. I wish there was. It's almost like, especially if we do not use the local associations, it's pretty much putting a big giant puzzle piece together is what I've always liked to say when I've done girls volleyball, baseball, even when I did used to do wrestling as well. We provide, the information that you associations provide to us from your crews. And then we need to make sure that the most important is that we get those games covered. We want the best officials out there during our state series, and it's constantly a moving piece. And we put those two, make sure we put the best association out there for those games.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. I am not seeing any other questions, so we're right under that hour mark. We value all of your time. Don't want to keep you here too late. We love speaking to you and being on board here with our associations and trying to spread a consistent message throughout the state. Next week, we do have another webinar planned. 5 and 7-man mechanics. It will be held by Broward. So I'm not sure if I've sent that out yet, but that information will be going out shortly if it hasn't gone out. So keep your eye on that. As of right now, that is planned to be the last one. I was thinking of possibly holding one for clock operators and the importance of clock operators. We really haven't touched anything on clock operators the last couple years since we've been doing this. So I thought maybe if we have some interest in that, we can have a final webinar if needed for clock operators. But again, thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate everyone joining us. Robbie, you have anything?
No, I just want to definitely take an opportunity to thank you all. You all are busy. You all are out there. You guys and gals are all out there working hard. And I know as a former educator working inside the school system, we appreciate you officials. We appreciate everything you all do. You are what helps our student athletes succeed and make it throughout the fall, the winter, and the spring. So I want to thank you for that. Also want to thank Chris and Jake for taking the time to step up and have those conversations with us. That's something that we never want to have to go through, but we completely understand that, being able to hear what it actually takes, when there is guns and things like that at our events. And also, Jeremy, thank you and Taylor for putting these together. We do appreciate it, and it is a pleasure. And I want to thank you all, and y'all have a great evening.
Yes. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jake. And everyone have a great night and stay safe.